What if I told you one of the biggest bands in America completely vanished from history, even after selling more records than almost everyone except the Beatles and the Rolling Stones? In the late 1960s, millions of teenagers watched them every afternoon on national television. They had gold records, screaming fans, hit songs, and one of the strangest images in rock history. 5 guys dressed like the American Revolution, tricorn hats, colonial jackets, knee boots, and somehow it made them stars. Then almost overnight, the culture turned on them. The costumes became embarrassing. Critics laughed at them. Half the band quit. And just when it looked completely over, they came back with the biggest hit of their entire career. But to understand how strange that comeback really was, you have to start in a bakery in Idaho. The year is 1958. In Caldwell, Idaho, a 26-year-old restaurant owner named Paul Revere Dick spends his nights playing piano in local bands. During the day, he runs burger restaurants. One morning, he walks into a bakery to pick up hamburger buns, when the baker mentions a teenager who jumped on stage at one of Paul's shows the night before and shocked everyone with his voice. Then the teenager behind the counter takes off his apron and says, "That was me." The kid is 16 years old. His name is Mark Lindsay. Paul invites him to rehearsal almost immediately. Before long, they form a band called the Downbeats. At first, they are just another local act, playing school dances and tiny clubs across Idaho and Oregon. Most nights, they barely make enough money for gas. But even early on, people notice something different. Mark has the voice, sharp, confident, and rough around the edges. Paul has the personality, loud, funny, impossible to ignore. In 1960, they record a few demo tapes and drive to Los Angeles looking for a record deal. Most labels reject them instantly, but one small producer sees potential. He looks at Paul's real name and realizes it sounds unforgettable. Paul Revere, like the Revolutionary War hero. He tells them to use it. Suddenly, the Downbeats become Paul Revere and the Raiders. The first records flop, then another flops after that. For a moment, it already looks over before it even begins, but then they release an instrumental song called Like Long Hair. Against all odds, it starts climbing the Billboard charts in 1961. Slowly at first, then nationally, the song reaches the top 40. Dick Clark invites them onto American Bandstand. A local band from Idaho is suddenly on national television. And here's the crazy part. Just as their career finally starts taking off, everything falls apart. Only weeks after finally breaking into the national charts, Paul Revere Dick gets drafted into military service. It could not have happened at a worse time. The band finally has momentum. They finally have industry attention. And suddenly, their leader is gone. Because of his Mennonite background, Paul is classified as a conscientious objector. Instead of combat duty, he works as a cook at a state hospital in Oregon. Meanwhile, the Raiders slowly collapse. Mark Lindsay tries staying in California to chase a solo career, but nothing happens. No hits, no momentum, no money. For almost a year, the band barely exists. Most groups would have ended right there. But wait, this next part changes everything. In late 1962, Paul finishes his service and moves to Portland, Oregon. He calls Mark and tells him they are starting over from scratch. They recruit new musicians, including drummer Mike Smith, and begin playing every possible show across the Pacific Northwest. Tiny clubs, school gyms, fraternity parties, anywhere that pays. Soon they become one of the biggest live bands in the region. Then in 1963, they record a song that nearly changes music history. The song is Louie Louie. Today it is considered one of the most famous garage rock songs ever made. But at the time, nobody knew that. It was just a rough R&B track written years earlier by Richard Berry. The Raiders record their version in Portland and release it through Columbia Records, which had just signed them. And here's where it gets brutal. Another Portland band called The Kingsmen records the exact same song only days earlier. The two versions hit radio stations almost at the same time, but the Kingsmen version sounds messier, louder, and completely chaotic. The vocals are so slurred that listeners can barely understand the lyrics. Ironically, that confusion makes it unforgettable. Teenagers love it. Radio stations play it constantly. The Kingsmen version explodes nationally. The Raiders version disappears almost immediately. Imagine losing the biggest hit of your life because another band released the same song first by a matter of days. For the second time, Paul Revere and the Raiders are nearly finished. And honestly, 1964 should have killed them completely. The Beatles arrive in America. The British invasion takes over everything. Radio stations suddenly want accents, long hair, and bands from England. Hundreds of American groups vanish almost overnight. The Raiders survive by grinding through endless live shows while the entire music industry changes around them. Then, in 1965, two people walk into their story and completely transform their future. The first is young producer Terry Melcher, the son of actress Doris Day. The second is television legend Dick Clark. And together, they are about to turn 5 struggling musicians from the Pacific Northwest into one of the biggest acts in America. Terry Melcher is only in his early 20s, but he already understands something most producers miss. The Raiders cannot beat the British bands by copying them. They need their own identity, something louder, sharper, more American. So, Melcher toughens their sound. The guitars become meaner, the drums hit harder. The records suddenly feel dangerous instead of clean and polished. Then, in late 1965, the band releases Just Like Me. The song explodes. By early 1966, it reaches number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100. After years of failures, false starts, and almost breaking up multiple times, Paul Revere and the Raiders finally have a real national hit. But what happens next is even bigger. At the exact same moment, Dick Clark is launching a brand new afternoon television show called Where the Action Is. He needs a house band that can perform every single weekday for teenagers across America. A band that looks exciting on camera and can keep up with non-stop television production. He picks the Raiders, and here's where the costumes enter the story. Because of Paul's name, the band leans into Revolutionary War imagery. Tricorn hats, colonial jackets, knee boots. Somehow, instead of looking ridiculous, it works perfectly in 1965. The image feels fun, loud, and unmistakably American at a time when British bands dominate radio. Millions of teenagers suddenly see the Raiders every afternoon after school. Almost overnight, Mark Lindsay becomes a teen idol. Fan magazines put him on their covers constantly. Kids memorize the names of every band member. Paul Revere Dick becomes the wild comedian of the group, always joking around on camera with frantic energy. And the hits just keep coming. Kicks reaches number 4. Hungry reaches number 6. Good Thing becomes another massive hit. Then comes Him or Me. What's it gonna be? Another top 10 record.
You'll never run away from you. And if you keep on running, rules along the way, girl, you gotta understand. Yes, I was this thing, girl. So on you.
Between 1966 and 1969, the band places 12 singles inside the top 30. Think about how insane that is. At their peak, only the Beatles and the Rolling Stones sold more records among rock bands in America. And yet today, most people barely remember them. But what if I told you the beginning of their downfall happens at the exact moment they become huge? Because while the Raiders are dominating television, the entire culture around rock music is starting to change, fast. By 1967, the summer of love arrives. Psychedelic rock explodes. Jimi Hendrix is setting guitars on fire. The Doors are becoming symbols of rebellion. Albums like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band completely change what rock music looks and sounds like. Suddenly, the Raiders' colonial costumes do not feel cool anymore. They feel outdated. The same outfits that made them stars 2 years earlier now make serious rock fans laugh at them. And here's the painful part. The music is still good. Listen to Kicks today. The guitars snarl, the vocals sound aggressive, The band has real edge. But in 1967, image matters as much as music, and the Raiders are now trapped inside an image they cannot escape. Then the band itself starts breaking apart from the inside. By late 1967, 3 major members of the Raiders are gone almost at the same time. Guitarist Drake Levin, bassist Phil Volk, and drummer Mike Smith all walk away. For fans, it is shocking. These are not anonymous background musicians. Teenagers know them by name. They are on television constantly. Fan magazines treat them like celebrities. But behind the scenes, tensions have been building for months. The band members are tired of being treated like a teen act. They want to make more serious music. They want artistic respect. They want to move away from the matching costumes and non-stop television appearances. So they leave and form a new group called Brotherhood. It goes nowhere, but the damage to the Raiders is massive. And here's where it gets crazier. Around the same time, producer Terry Melcher quietly starts using session musicians on recordings. By 1968, many Raiders songs are no longer being played entirely by the actual band members fans see on television. Sometimes Paul plays, sometimes he does not. Sometimes the touring musicians are completely different from the studio musicians. Now, to be fair, this was more common in the 1960s than people realize. The Beach Boys did it. Even the Monkees became famous for it. But for the Raiders, it creates a serious problem. Their entire brand depends on personality. Fans feel connected to the 5 specific guys they watch every afternoon on TV. Once that chemistry starts disappearing, the illusion weakens. Then another disaster hits. In 1967, Where the Action Is gets canceled. Just like that, the Raiders lose the daily television exposure that helped make them stars. Dick Clark tries helping them by launching another music show called Happening 68. But the momentum is fading. Rock music is moving toward heavier album-focused bands like Led Zeppelin and Cream. FM radio is taking over. Long experimental songs are replacing quick pop singles. And honestly, a band dressed like the American Revolution does not fit that world anymore. The Raiders know it too. They begin dropping the costumes during some appearances. They experiment with heavier sounds and psychedelic influences. Albums like Hard and Heavy try to reintroduce them as a more serious rock band, but nothing fully works. The hits become smaller, the crowds slowly shrink. And by 1969, it feels like the story is ending. Then the band makes a decision that quietly admits the truth. In early 1970, they shortened the name to simply Raiders. No more Paul Revere and the Raiders. No more heavy colonial branding. No more leaning into the old image that once made them famous. They are trying to escape their own past. For a while, it changes nothing. The records keep slipping down the charts. The music industry moves on. New bands dominate the conversation. And most people assume the Raiders are only months away from disappearing completely. But wait. Because just when everyone writes them off, they accidentally stumble into the biggest hit of their entire career. In 1971, Mark Lindsay finds a song called Indian Reservation. Officially, the full title is Indian Reservation, the lament of the Cherokee Reservation, Indian.
Cherokee people, Cherokee tribe.
It is completely different from the loud garage rock sound that made the Raiders famous. There are no aggressive guitars, no playful energy, no revolutionary war gimmick. Instead, it is slow, emotional, and serious. The song tells the story of Native Americans being forced from their land during the Trail of Tears. At first glance, it does not even sound like something the Raiders would record, which is exactly why nobody expects what happens next. By this point, Mark has taken over much of the band's production work after Terry Melcher leaves. He records the song with mostly studio musicians backing him. In reality, very little of the actual touring band appears on the record. And here's the wild part. That does not matter at all, because the moment the song hits radio stations, audiences connect with it instantly. America is deep in the Vietnam War era. Protest movements are everywhere. Social issues dominate the news. Suddenly, this unexpected song from a band many people considered outdated feels strangely relevant. Then the numbers become unbelievable. In July 1971, Indian Reservation reaches number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Not number 10, not number 5, number 1. It becomes the biggest hit in the entire history of Paul Revere and the Raiders. Bigger than Kicks, bigger than Hungry, bigger than every song from their television peak in the 1960s. After years of decline, after critics dismissed them, after fans moved on, the Raiders somehow score the biggest record of their lives. You thought that was big? Try this. The single reportedly sells close to 3 million copies during its initial run. Columbia Records suddenly has one of the biggest songs in America, from a band most executives had already stopped taking seriously. It should have launched a second act. It should have reinvented them. It does neither. The follow-up singles chart modestly, but the magic disappears almost immediately. None of the later songs come close to matching the success of Indian Reservation. Instead of becoming a comeback story,
Cherokee Nation will return.
The song becomes one final explosion before the lights go out. By 1974, tensions inside the band return again. Paul Revere Dick and Mark Lindsay want completely different futures. Paul enjoys entertaining crowds and touring constantly. Mark wants artistic respect as a producer and songwriter. Eventually, Mark walks away. Soon after, Columbia Records drops the band completely. And just like that, one of the biggest American bands of the 1960s quietly collapses with almost no attention from the music industry, no dramatic farewell, no giant final concert, just paperwork, exhausted musicians, and a label moving on to newer acts. 17 years earlier, it all started with hamburger buns in an Idaho bakery. Now it ends in a corporate office in Los Angeles. But what if I told you the strangest chapter of the Raiders story actually happens after the breakup? After the breakup, most people expect Paul Revere Dick to disappear quietly into music history. Instead, he reinvents himself completely. By the late 1970s, Paul realizes something important before almost anyone else in rock music. The teenagers who watched Where the Action Is every afternoon are now adults. They have jobs, families, and disposable income. More importantly, they miss the music they grew up with. So Paul turns the Raiders into something new, part concert, part comedy show, part nostalgia machine. He starts touring relentlessly across casinos, fairs, theaters, and oldies shows all over America. Some nights he wears the colonial costume. Other nights he jokes about how ridiculous it was. He leans into the humor instead of fighting it, and surprisingly, it works. The Raiders become one of the most successful nostalgia acts in the country. While many 60s bands fade away completely, Paul keeps performing year after year, decade after decade. Think about how crazy that is. The kids screaming at him on television in 1966, grow up, get married, have children, and enter middle age. And somewhere in America, Paul Revere is still on stage playing kicks and making jokes between songs. Meanwhile, Mark Lindsay goes in a completely different direction. Instead of chasing nostalgia, he focuses on writing and producing music. He works on commercials, solo material, and radio projects. Over time, he becomes respected inside the industry, even without the massive fame he once had. But the years keep moving. Former members begin passing away. Mike Smith dies in 2001. Drake Levin dies from cancer in 2009. And still, Paul keeps touring. Then in October 2014, the story finally changes forever. Paul Revere dies at his home in Idaho after battling cancer. He is 76 years old. For many people, it feels like the final end of the Raiders' story. The band that once dominated television has become little more than a memory on oldies radio stations and dusty vinyl records. But wait, because the music never completely disappears. In 2019, Quentin Tarantino releases Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The movie is set in 1969, and Tarantino becomes obsessed with using authentic music from the era. So, he fills parts of the soundtrack with Raiders songs: Hungry, Good Thing, Mr. Sun, Mr. Moon. Suddenly, younger audiences hear the band for the first time. Streams climb online. Vinyl collectors rediscover their albums. Garage rock fans begin talking about them differently. And here's where the entire legacy changes. For decades, critics dismissed the Raiders as lightweight television pop. But modern music historians start listening closer to those early records. The aggressive guitar tones, the raw vocals, the fast, stripped-down sound. People realize the Raiders helped shape garage rock years before punk existed. Even the Sex Pistols later covered the Raiders' version of "I'm Not Your Stepping Stone." That means one of the most influential punk bands in history was inspired by a group once mocked for wearing tricorn hats on afternoon television. And honestly, that might be the perfect ending to their story. A band that spent years being called uncool eventually survives long enough to become influential again. Not because of nostalgia, because the music was actually good the whole time.